It is 5:45, so I will call the meeting to order and welcome you to our October board meeting. So with that, we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, Mrs. Oxley, if you could do the roll call.
Ms. Hamilton?
Present.
Mrs. Brown? Mr. White? Ms. Hunt?
Here.
Mrs. Simonetti? Mrs. Fitzgerald? And Mrs. Mitchell.
Here. Okay, we are on number 4, approval of the agenda. So at this time, I would entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved. Support.
Okay, thank you, Libby. Thank you, Shalonda. Any deliberation? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, and we are on number 5, superintendent's report, so I will pass it over to Mr. Beal.
Thank you very much, and welcome to November, or almost November, October. It feels like November out there. And the reason I want to thank you very much for your patience as we've had several board meetings over at Parkside and to be able to transition back into this space. We are actually hoping to complete construction here in November, and so everybody's going, well, where are the books? And there are about 12,000 books yet to come out. Our librarian is set to start, but they're still doing some finishing touches on our bookcases that needed a little bit of extra attention. Remember that these are the originals, so they've been around a while. And as you can see as you wander through, and I hope you will take a minute after the meeting to kind of visit, take a walk up and down. The sign back there says Viking Cafe. It's ultimately going to be Cafe Orange, and that's a student-run coffee shop. So it'll be tailoring to students. It's a entrepreneurial class, so you will see students in there. They got to order it, they got to make it, they've got to account for all the budgeting that goes into it and sell and work the coffee shop. So coffees and smoothies and juices and bagels and so on. And but it's a neat opportunity for our students, and you'll get to see what will become as we have more and more students participate in our early college program. It really will become this broader spectrum of use, and you can kind of get a feel for what our students will experience. And I know we've got John R. Lewis families here and students. We're building this for you. So please take a look around, enjoy yourself, and understand what's coming for your children in the coming weeks. So when they get here, it's going to be ready for them. Our esports team is practicing, so we've got a beautiful esports lab, and I'll try to open that up and let everybody see what that looks like while you're in. So again, just some neat things that we have. After the meeting, I'd encourage you to hang out and at least take a peek. We'll get this, like I said, opened up here. Construction should be completed here by the end of November is our plan. And then lastly, for me, obviously October is count month, and I'm very pleased to recognize that Jackson Public Schools is the fastest growing district in our county right now. We grew by about 160 students this year. That's good for us. Budget-wise, I'm sure Marcus will see that in our first amendment. But we initially we always planned to be down about 120 to 150 students. And we've always, I shouldn't say always, for the last several years been down about 60 to 70 kids. So this is actually going to be a nice swing for us. It should be a turnaround of about 300 students better than budget. So it should feel really good kind of going into the school year, and I'm again very happy with that. That's going to conclude my portion, and I'm going to pass this over to Ms. Weatherwax. Jill, you're up. You want to show off and share out what's going on at John R. Lewis?
I do. So we have with us today some of our honored students. An anonymous group in Jackson has sponsored. All right, so we have some of our top students today. They are our Good Trouble students, and a local anonymous group sponsors these shirts. These students are recognized by their teachers
for causing good trouble in the spirit of John R. Lewis by being responsible students, role models to others, doing great with their schoolwork, and being excellent representatives of the school. They are going to start our portion by reciting the John R. Lewis Creed. On the desk when you came in is a handout that breaks down our creed. It is based on 3 of John R. Lewis's quotes. So if you didn't get to pick one of these up, please do grab one on your way out. With me is Ms. Dom, our STEAM teacher. We are a STEAM school with a focus on science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. I want to share with you, in addition to our creed, our John R. Lewis Viking values: kindness, logic, inclusion, equity, curiosity, independence, and integrity. And these students model these characteristics every day. Some of our points of pride: we have a highly skilled and collaborative staff. We have our Good Trouble students and awards, caught making the world a better place, which is based on John R. Lewis quotes and also part of the creed. So that's part of our PBIS system. They can earn those tickets for when they're recognized by a staff member for making the world a better place. And we fill our extravaganza board, and it's almost filled. And when it's filled, then we have a celebration school-wide. We also have an SEL program called Character Strong, and there's a focus on a trait each month. We're on responsibility this month, and so students are nominated by their peers to be that student of the month for each of those awards. We have a behavior interventionist with a refocus room, monthly family events. We are known for our positive and calm environment. If you visit our school, and we hope that you do, we get frequent comments that people just feel good and feel calm and relaxed and in our beautiful building. We are piloting orchestra classes, so we have 3 age groups of strings classes. And we are, like I said, a STEAM school, so I'd like to turn it over to Alita Dom, AKA Space Teacher, to tell you more. And this is also, we did have this handout that's available at the desk. If you didn't catch that, it has some of the pictures she's going to talk about.
Good evening. As many of you on the board know me, but for those of you who don't, my name is Alita Dom, and I have been an employee of the district since 1994. 20 of those years were at the middle school Parkside. I'm excited to present to you tonight our STEAM program at John R. Lewis, and incidentally, it's pretty much the same program at the Montessori Center. STEAM, STEM, and STREAM. There are a lot of different programs out there, all with the common goal of creating a culture where our students will be competitive globally as thinkers. At John R. Lewis, we have created a STEAM program, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Mathematics. Students are provided with a variety of opportunities to engage in science, both in their home classrooms and in mine. These include field trips, outdoor exploration, classroom activities, and science topics across the NJSS elementary science standards. For example, in my class this week, we are studying bats, including life cycles, traits, and conservation. When we think of technology, we often think of computers. In the education world, the working definition of technology is the application of scientific knowledge for practical purposes, especially in industry. In the STEAM classroom, we apply scientific knowledge to create things such as bee habitats for local farmers and athletic equipment during the Olympics this last year. We also do many forms of coding, most of which is unplugged coding, such as binary coding, directional coding, designing puzzles and mazes, and other creative tasks. In unplugged coding, students use their knowledge to work on computational challenges that will help them understand the concepts they will then go on to use in their coding projects. Students apply those skills then to code the Code and Go mouse, Spheros, Botley, Artie, and Kobo the snail. Students were also visited by my son, who taught them how to 3D print, as well as 3D printing applications. He shared with students some of his projects he created, and students were even able to try on his Star Wars helmet, and he explained the steps that went into printing it. Engineering is one of our students' favorite things. We often have an engineering project that complements the science topic we are studying at the time. For example, I've included a picture of one of their engineering projects from the last Winter Olympics, as well as a design challenge to build the tallest tower to hold a ball. The Pringle Challenge was a favorite during one of our STEAM family nights last year. Our favorite activity, though, in the STEAM room is Free Play Fridays, which are held during the first and third trimester every Friday. You may have seen many of these pictures on our Facebook page. On Free Play Fridays, students have 6 stations with a variety of materials to use. The emphasis is on creativity. These days are important because play improves the cognitive, physical, and social well-being of children. They learn skills in communication, building relationships, perseverance, and problem solving. The arts are important to our students. Art is a reflection of society and culture. It helps us understand who we are and influence how we relate to each other. In our STEAM class, not only do we incorporate the visual arts, but also the language arts. Every topic we study starts with a story. These give students the opportunity to practice their listening skills, as well as topics like comparing and contrasting, cause and effect, and fact and opinion. Topics which are important in developing reading skills as well as scientific skills. We recently learned about pointillism on International Dot Day, and the students did a great job with their pictures. We have also learned about things such as optical illusion, and we will soon be studying the artist O'Keeffe. Students apply their skills in mathematics to create all kinds of things. We have learned about shapes and patterns. We explored patterns in nature as well as in art. I reinforced counting in the younger grades and computation in the older grades. These are some of the projects on the last slide that students used when we achieved evergreen status in our inaugural year as a school. We have already started working on achieving evergreen status for this year as well. Thank you for your time tonight. We are excited about what our students are doing every day at John R. Lewis.
Thank you for hosting us.
All right. Up next, Ms. Julie Baker with our elementary update.
Good evening, everyone. Another great day to be a Viking. We've had some really exciting things happening in the last couple of months. Kind of like to give you some highlights from September. We at Cascades are very busy implementing a new positive behavior and intervention and support program. That's what teachers spent the majority of their day yesterday doing. They've also been doing some things that are being copied in other buildings right now, providing some special training for our parapros and our TAs so that they can better be involved in guided reading and small math instructional groups, so that what we've noticed is that we added parapros in some of the classrooms, and not only did the parapros not know what to do, but some teachers are not used to having help. And so they weren't quite sure what to do with the parapros to really, use their time to the best advantage. So Cascades is kind of leading the way with some training that they're doing. Very proud of that. Crescenda has also done a great job of meeting with parents. She has been doing donuts with grown-ups, which I think is a cool name for that, where she meets, they do coffee, they do donuts, and they have a chance to meet the principal and talk about their concerns. At Dibble, you may have heard, but Dibtacular took place a couple of weeks ago, and I saw a lot of pictures of Mrs. Kewen being dunked in the dunk tank. But there's also, it consists of an obstacle course, and it's a fundraising event, but it really is also a community event. So some really great things happened there that day, lots of fun to be had. And they have implemented a program called Spot the Dibble Difference. So they're tickets that are handed out to students, sort of like the Good Trouble program at John R. Lewis. When they see students that are exemplifying Viking values, they pass those out and recognize kids for that. So it's another version of PBIS. At Hunt, they're doing the Victorious Vikings program. And so it is, they focus on one specific behavior or virtue from their matrix each month, and then they, this month they're focusing on responsibility. And when they see students exemplifying that, students receive those tickets and they have drawings. So there's a lot of fun happening there. They also, as are all of our elementary buildings, participating in the Partnership for Success program with the ISD. And so they focus in on looking at asset building for our 4th and 5th grade students. And so the students in 4th and 5th grade have finished their asset profiles, and they'll use that data to determine what kind of programs could help to build assets in areas that were less strong in that building. So they're excited about that work. Montessori, they are back in the big swing of things, getting parents and families back into the building. They had Parents' Night Out. They had a trunk or treat with Felicia Children's Center. They are functioning or working with Building Healthy Communities, which is another program that is in all K-5 buildings right now. And it is focusing on the health and well-being of all students. And so they provide us with a nutrition curriculum, a PE curriculum, and then funds so that we could do after-school health and wellness programs with students. So that's something that is happening in every building. They're kicking it off with the coaches in each of those buildings. Another thing that is interesting about Montessori is that they have some really great after-school programs that have gotten started around student-specific interests. And 2 of those are Girls Who Run. So the Girls on the Run got started just recently, and we're just hearing rave reviews from the girls that are involved in that, getting out, getting physically active, and then also Girls Who Code. So we'll have some other programs coming, but those are a big hit, and our students are really getting involved with that. At Northeast, we had a superstar. Former Spartan Anthony Lonnie came to speak with students about the effects of bullying. They had a wonderful Latino Family Night celebration, and they just recently had their first extravaganza of the year as well. So extravaganza is one of the, when you hear about one of those happening, it's one of the cornerstones of a PBIS program. And so it's celebrating great behavior. Looks a lot like a fair, but it's stopping everything for about an hour to celebrate the good behavior that happened in that building. So good things happening there. We also had some staff members that went through nurturing parenting training, not just from Northeast, but from several of our elementary schools. Mr. Anthony Coffey and Aaron Slater are leading that initiative. And that training will allow the people that go through that to provide 12 weeks of training to parents that want to be part of the Nurturing Parenting program. So it's providing some skills and some ideas for parenting, building a community of parents together to talk about what their concerns are and to get support from one another. We're really looking forward to seeing the effects of that. And then Northeast has a really strong parent advisory committee that has already been meeting. Sharp Park, I don't know if you heard about this. This is another big one. We do it every year, but Spobstacle came and went. And it was my first opportunity to see that. They had to move their operations to the field next door. And so people got out and did a whole bunch of mowing. It was a big, big operation for a lot of different groups, but particularly parents. So lots and lots of parents came out and made that a very special event. They raised quite a bit of money, which is wonderful. They'll put that back into educational programs for their building. And they also, if you may have noticed if you were at the homecoming parade, that there was a big group of Sharp Park kids that were all walking through with their cars. So lots of great things happening there. Very strong PBIS happening at Sharp Park. And then a practice that we see at Sharp Park that is particularly impactful is that Mrs. Lesby goes through and does monthly data walks. So she goes through and she has communicated a set of look-fors, things that she believes are very important to the instructional practices in the building. She goes through, and when she sees those, she writes those down, and then she reports back to the buildings or to the teachers about what she saw. Not knocks, like I didn't see this in room, 232. What she sees is, what she does is she communicates back the great things that she did see that were evidence of those practices and where other people could go to watch if they were interested in implementing something similar. So it's a really positive practice, and as I said, it's very impactful. Good stuff happening there. At Lewis, I don't want to give too much more information. They told quite a bit. They do have a spooky STEAM family night coming up soon, and then they have professional learning communities regularly with their instructional coaches. And and I forgot to talk about, at Sharp Park, they have band, and also at Lewis, they have orchestra. And I know that you're working with 4th and 5th grade students doing band at Sharp Park, and I believe that she's got orchestra, I think it's K through 5, but it gives our elementary students a chance to build up skills with instruments so that when they get to Parkside, it kind of gives them a little leg up. So we're excited about those programs in the arts. Other things that are happening at the elementary level, we're really excited because we have 4 now staff members that are trained to provide nonviolent crisis intervention training through CPI to JPS staff. And we had our first 2 classes this week. So we did level 2 courses on October 17th, Monday. So we got our first group of 35 parapros and TAs that went through with 2 trainers that are JPS staff. So Stacy Pilarski and Assistant Principal Sandy Martin provided the training. And then today and tomorrow, they're working with another group to do level 3 training with our key identified personnel, so people that would respond to a crisis in the building. So they've got about 12 people that are going through that. So we're very excited that we have that available and that it's our JPS team that is providing that. And there's a little piece there that talks about, we really believe that CPI is very important training for every one of our staff members to have. It teaches skills in de-escalation, and we really believe that it will lead to a safer environment in all of our schools. There'll be a change in the climate and culture, which will impact ultimately student achievement because our students will, there'll be less of those violent outbursts and more of kids being able to regulate themselves, and teachers able to help them regulate themselves when things get hard for them. So we're excited about that. I added monthly attendance rates, and we're going to start tracking that. We really, we're concerned about attendance in our district. We know that we can't do anything to impact the achievement of students or to provide for their social and emotional learning if they're not in class. And so we know that we're seeing an improvement in our attendance, but it's still an issue. And so we want to make sure that we're going to track that with you and show you how that's going. We have some work that we're going to be doing soon around improving attendance in our district and incentivizing that. So I added a section on interventions to address learning loss. There's quite a few things that are in place at the elementary level. We talk about what I need time. That happens 3 to 5 times a week. And that is where students are provided with instruction at their specific instructional level and to meet a need that has been identified through the data that we've generated through our assessments. So we use that assessment data to figure out what every kid needs, and then we put them into groups to make sure they get those needs met. Lots of small group instruction that's happening, and that's around reading and math. And usually that happens during center time. So again, that might be guided reading. It might be that students need help with a certain phonemic awareness piece. Maybe they don't know their digraphs or something else. It could also be around math, but we take kids that have like needs and put them into groups and make sure that they get those needs met. You'll remember the LLI kits that were purchased for our buildings. Those are being used by teachers and by retired teachers, and we're also teaching our parapros to be able to use those. And those provide that leveled instruction to meet the needs of students in literacy. We have instructional coaches in every building. Some buildings have 2, and they work with small groups of students 50% of their time. So our lowest kids, we would say, that need Tier 3 instruction or intervention, we have our coaches that push in to work with those small groups of kids. And they also help to instruct our parapros and our retired teachers in the interventions that they put in place for kids. Lexia Core 5 and Symphony Math are in place in all of our K-5 buildings, and those are platforms where students get on and they work independently, and they do receive instruction in new skills, and it helps to fill the gaps in instruction for kids. So they take a placement test at the very beginning. It puts them at a specific level, and kids continue to receive instruction, and as they master things, they move to the next level. But if they get stuck, it flags the teacher, and then the teacher is able to provide that intervention in a small group, or to assign materials to a parapro or a retired teacher to be able to do that as well. After-school tutoring will be coming up in November, and summer school. So any students that are identified to, they have needs that need to be met, they're functioning below grade level, those are students that will qualify for those programs. And the last thing for tonight, I'm sorry that there's so much, but there's a lot going on. I will be working on an application to seek out 98C funding. It is a grant that is it's being offered to address learning loss. And so that opened up, and it will close on November 30th. But one of the things I need to do is make sure that I'm bringing that to a board meeting. So I wanted to talk to you about what I'm hoping that we'll be able to fund with this. So one of the things that, a lot of what we'll be looking at is professional development. And one of the pieces that's very important to our K-5 instruction, particularly with the Read by Grade 3 legislation, is making sure that kids can read at their instructional level. And one of the pieces that we're looking at is the essential literacy practices for K through 5. And there are many different pieces of that. There's what's pushed into the classroom, instructional pieces. There are coaching pieces for coaches and for principals. And then there's also a school-wide piece. So what that is looking at all of the parts of a literacy environment and making sure that those are all in place. And all of those are modules that require an investment of time. It could be providing teachers and principals and others with release time so that they can finish the modules in the instruction, or it might be stipends after school. So quite a few of the trainings that we're looking at have to do with that, including learning labs. So it's learning labs are a practice where you take a small group of teachers and coaches, and you go in and you observe a lesson that's being taught, and it may even be a lesson that you've helped the person delivering it to design. And then you work on improving that instruction by providing feedback. So learning more about that, we want to look at providing updated classroom libraries. We know that kids that have access to a variety of really engaging literature and text in the classroom are kids that grow up to be kids that love reading. So we want to update that. We're looking at updating book sets that we would use for guided reading, providing guided reading training for all teachers and parapros, funding additional monthly literacy events for families, looking at additional parent liaisons for K-5 buildings, and funding a Leader in Me program to come back at Cascades Elementary. That was an effective program, and we would like to see that come back in the coming years. Also some things for our secondary groups, looking at IXL for Jackson High School, Rosetta Stone for our secondary English language students, and National Geographic textbooks for our high school students. So none of these are a given thing, they're just going into the application, but I wanted to make you aware that we were seeking it, and we should have some information sometime after November 30th about whether or not we receive it. Are there any questions?
Yes. I have some questions for you. So a lot of information, so.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. So I don't have all the names of all the stuff that you, because it was just a lot coming at us. So a couple questions. So Lexia and Core 5, is that new to us?
No, we've actually had Lexia Core 5 for a long time, and we love it. We see some really great results from it. What we've been trying to do is find something that measures up for math, and we might be onto it now.
Okay, so
But
this
it's something we've had for a long time, and we've seen good results.
And this is English, I guess, then? Lexia and
Yes.
Core 5?
Yep.
Now, do we have data already from it? So how long have we had that?
We have probably had that, I'm going to say it's been at least 5 years.
Okay, so we probably do have data from it.
Yes.
Whether or not it's actually helping and
Yeah.
improving, it is? So
Yep.
is it?
Yes. Yeah, we do. We see good results from it.
Okay,
We
thank
do.
you. A couple more questions for you. So Sandy Martin, you said she didn't, so I don't remember the name of the program that she just trained. What is it again?
It's called Nonviolent Crisis Intervention Training, and it's offered through CPI is the name of the company.
Now, is that new?
No, actually, we've done nonviolent crisis intervention training for as many people as we could get through every year. We do it at different levels based on, the needs of the person. So for a classroom teacher, it's really just having them go in and learn the de-escalation strategies and some of the other strategies that just help to diffuse a situation so
long
that
have we
we
had
can
that?
get kids back to it. And then for others, like our key personnel, if we have somebody that we know is going to be responding to a violent situation, they have a deeper level. But we've always done it through the ISD. And so sometimes it's limiting because they only have a certain number of openings. So sometimes we have to wait for that. But our entire admin team keeps up their certification in it, and we've been certified for years.
So what's it, sorry about that. So it's designed to basically help teachers in the classroom learn how to de-escalate. Have you been keeping data from before we had it, now that we have it, and seen any type of change, benefit? Because
It is something that there is data to support it, but also it's something you don't want to not have certification in.
So I agree
Because
with it. I just wonder if we have data. Do we have any data that says that, if we've had it for a while, do we have any data that's kind of saying that, this is kind of how it's impacting us, how it's making us better? Are we keeping that? Do we have that?
I'm sure that we could find it, but it's not something it's not that type of program. It's certification that we keep because we want to make sure that our teachers know how to respond in those situations. It's a safety piece.
Okay, 'cause
it's a safety and security piece.
Right, it sounds like, that if we have some type of situation that a teacher needs to de-escalate, we would have information on the fact that there was a situation that needed
Absolutely.
to be de-escalated.
It
And
helps
then we'd
us-
have- Sorry, one more time.
Yeah.
And then we'd have information that says that it worked.
Yeah.
So we don't have that kind of data, is what you're saying.
Other than just that it does work with us. I mean, the teachers that go through it, they have, let's say that there's a student that is doing something that is an imminent danger to themselves, ready to jump, or they're hurting themselves, they're hitting their head on the floor. It gives us the tools to know how to hold that student safely so that they don't injure themselves or anybody else. So it's that type of training. It's a piece that's meant to make sure that we have the tools that we need to keep our kids safe.
Thank you. And I think you answered this already. You said, how long do we have this, or how long have we had this?
Oh, I don't know how long we've been doing. It's for over a decade. Yeah.
Oh, wow. And we don't have data showing how it's impacting us. It would be really beneficial to know, how well it's working, how it's impacting, detention, how it's impacting, students' behavior, how it's impacting. It would just be really nice to hear that,
Yeah.
at some time. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
And if I could just pipe in, because I'm employed by the ISD, I will say it's an excellent program, and even police officers around Jackson County have taken it. So we offer it all over the county, so it's excellent.
Thanks.
I just got a quick question to Trustee Hamilton. Are you asking for data about how the teachers handle the situation? Are we asking for data regarding how many children we prevented them from being hurt? Or I'm just trying to understand what type of data you're asking for.
I just want to understand if it happened, and then what we do about it, and then how it impacted the classroom, that type of data. So we need to have that data. That's what I said.
I'm very familiar with that program, obviously, all the years I've been doing what I do. And it's really not so much a data-driven program. It's kind of like everybody getting first aid certified, CPR certified. We don't keep track of how many people were choking and, at work. There's not like a data piece for a behavioral program like this. The idea is to get certified, kind of like getting a driver's license, You get certified, and that's a skill you have. If, God forbid, you ever need it, you're a safe person to be around.
Thank you for that, Pam. That's a helpful way to kind of explain.
I thought that might
what I was-
clarify, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That kind of helps it, because even when we're thinking about people who might, have some type of medical situation, we can kind of track these situations occurred, but because we got this training, now, as a result, they're not dying, you know what I mean? But in the educational sense, they're not being suspended, because we were able to de-escalate them. We're having less of these situations. We would have that kind of data, just as in the medical field. So that's just I just kind of want to know, how is it impacting us? You know what I mean? Is it working? So, I'm certified in CPR and et cetera. And I get it. If my kids have some type of situation going on, I can help them out, and I know that they're not going to have to go to the hospital because of it, versus if I didn't have it. You know what I mean? And I'd have the data to say, I've been trained, and so I kept them from it, versus I haven't been trained, and then we were at the hospital. I just kind of would like to know how it's impacting us.
Yeah,
I hate
and
that, it had to get, whatever. I just want to know if it's working for us.
That's a good analogy of first aid certification. That really is. It's a tool in their toolbox to help with those situations that sometimes we can keep them from becoming violent. We don't know what kids are facing, and sometimes we don't expect the response that we get. And it's a great way to help to bring the student down and be able to bring them back to class. So, thank you.
Make sure I got there we go. So I want to be very clear. With CPI, a chunk of the training, some of the certification piece that's very important to us is the ability to talk about the proper restraint for students. We do keep accurate data on every time a student is restrained or needs to be restrained, and exactly what the antecedent was and what the outcome was, and how long it happened and what type of hold was used. We're very articulate in that restraint portion of CPI, which is why we do this training, because we want to make certain that our students are protected, that when this happens, and it doesn't happen very often, but when it happens in a very safe fashion. But as far as the de-escalation, there is no data, and I'll be candid with you, I don't know exactly what that data would look like. I understand what you're asking, but our teachers, they interact with students from the moment they walk into the building to the moment they walk out of the building, and they're using these de-escalation strategies literally all day long. And so it's not this isn't well, I had to work and de-escalate with Julie type situation. They use these de-escalation strategies as part of their everyday teaching. It's a best practice, and it has been something that we've used for better part of 20 years, most part of my entire career. And there is a huge block of national data on CPI that talks about the impact and the effects. That's why it is so widely adopted. You'd be hard-pressed to find a school in the state of Michigan that's not using CPI. The benefit, as Julie spoke, was that now we have the ability to have our own trainers, and so we can work with every parapro, every TA, every secretary, every teacher. We can broaden our depth of training rather than simply having just those key personnel. And we certainly have key responders in each building, but this allows for a much deeper ability for us to keep our staff certified and provide them with a much broader range of skills. I hope that answered some of your question.
It does. I'm all for de-escalation. I'd much rather not see our students in detention and wherever else. If our teachers can do, de-escalation, I'm all for it. But I also would like to know, how is it impacting us? How is it changing us? Is it making us better? Is it working? It's one thing for us to be training our own teachers, because we got this great program going on, yay. But how great it is if it's not impacting us for the better, if it's not making, if our students are not, if there's not a change in the data. And we can't know that if there is or isn't if we're not tracking it. So that's all. I'm totally for it. But is it helping us? Or are we wasting money? I don't know.
Thank you very much, Julie. Appreciate it. Are there any other questions for Julie? Awesome. Next up, Jeremy Patterson. You want to talk about secondary programming?
Thought you wanted to call me Dr. Patterson there for a second, but.
I'll get there. I'll get there.
All right, starting off with Jackson High School, proud to share out, and I know this has been shared on JTV, Jackson High being the leaders and the best, 143 students enrolled in the early college program. This is the largest in the county, so they are very proud to present from 9th grade students all the way through 12th grade students earning college credit through JCEC. A huge celebration, continue to see that number climb over the years, so that word is getting out. Getting back to Jackson, our homecoming event was outstanding. They said it was the largest amount of money since we last played Lumen Christi at a home football game. So homecoming weekend brought back alumni that walked in the parade. There was a football game, of course. There was an alumni band performance, an alumni basketball game, which I happened to coach in. The stands were very full, and that was something new. You may have seen the new mascot. I don't think he was at homecoming, but he's here now. And there was a class in 1992. They had their 30th reunion and planned it around homecoming weekend. So there was just a great vibe and a lot of orange and black going on, and we won that football game too. So great homecoming activities. And we have a senior, Natalie Kulka. She finished 7th in the state after her appearance in the MHSA golf tournament this past weekend. So shout out to Natalie and the golf team. At Jackson Pathways, another huge celebration. We have a Jackson College collaboration with the Health Occupations program. So there are currently 15 students enrolled in this program, again, earning a certificate, earning college credits through health occupations. And the student count is up. You heard throughout the district, and especially at Jackson Pathways. They're at about 110 students, and this is kind of our credit recovery program, right? And they have predominantly juniors and seniors, so we anticipate seeing a lot of these students graduate, continuing to grow that number, catching these students at Jackson Pathways, 110 juniors and seniors. So they're keeping the 9th and 10th graders at Jackson High until they need this catch-up program. So Principal Lewis looks to see an increase in the number of students graduating from his program. Also, he has 51 out of those 110 students have jobs. So that's another primary purpose of the co-op program at Pathways, is to get students into different career pathways within the community. So that's going very well from the high school level. At middle school at Parkside, our German exchange program is off to a great start. They've been on kind of a pause with the COVID years and not traveling out of the country, but they had their initial meeting, and I believe there are some resources that have been secured to help families travel with the German exchange program, as well as others when they come back to traveling. Like Julie talked a lot about, we're really being intentional. You know, we're always hunting kids down through the count period, who came back to school, who didn't, and we'll continue those practices. So we have hired kind of an attendance liaison, as well as we partner with Department of Health and Human Services with a success coach, they call it. And they, again, track that data of monthly attendance. They do celebrations for kids who are in school, as well as like Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions for students who are falling behind in their attendance, so we can help them to get re-engaged and find out what challenges that they may be having to get to school and regularly. We instituted the AVID program at Jackson High last year, I believe, and Parkside this year. These AVID students went on their first visit to Albion College along with the high school students. So as many times we can get our middle school or younger age children on college campuses, they can be exposed to what potential opportunities are there for them down the road. Tonight there's an orchestra concert at Jackson High. So we heard a little bit about our orchestra program, and the orchestra teacher is shared between Jackson High and Parkside, so she's doing a fantastic job there, and also getting into the elementary to recruit kids into her program. So they'll be doing some Halloween tours in elementary buildings with our middle school and high school string students. 4th Street Learning Center, we brought back Power Mondays, where we try to bring in community leaders to offer words of encouragement for our students. We've had John Willis speak to our students, Nicoya Weatherspoon, Mr. Anderson, myself, and continue to make connections with our students with community leaders, as well as their PBIS system has been in place for years and is going well. Same thing, attendance matters, prizes and celebrations when students are in school regularly. South Central Michigan virtual number is also climbing, and this is one of our interesting programs where student count is a little bit different because you don't actually see them in the building every day. So there are over 400 students and climbing. Again, very significant increase since they first started at the Jackson Crossing. 2 things are happening. Community building with their elementary students. Monthly gathering opportunities are created to build that community amongst the elementary students. We know most of us work better in person, and many of our families have chosen the virtual for that reason, but we still want to build that sense of community. Their last trip was to Meckley's Flavor Fruit Farms, and that was a success. They're growing their capacity again, want to not only just have students working virtually, but coming into the building with our teachers when needed. So they are growing their space. Their current addition is under construction, and they hope to finish that pretty soon. So these are the updates from our secondary programs. Take any questions you might have.
I have one quick question. You said a attendance liaison was hired. What school, and can you just speak to their role?
Yeah, really secondary schools at this point in time, the district really, but going back to how we capture students at South Central Michigan Virtual. At Parkside, I just have to show up once. You see me, you count me, we're done. At 4th Street Learning Center, it's much more time consuming. So being a smaller in-person staff that they have, we wanted to get them some additional support to help track some of these kids down. There's only one Mr. Parker and one, Clifton can only knock on so many doors. You have to, I believe, count them for 4 consecutive weeks to receive the full financial compensation for counting students there. So we're starting him there as he's just coming along board, and then we have some attendance policies where if we don't see students for so many days, the administrators will forward those names, and that will become part of the caseload to get these students re-engaged so, potentially they don't end up dropping out of school. So starting at SEMV and going to where the priority needs are based on the administrator saying, hey, these kids are missing.
These are just to add to her question, this person's for SCMV and 4th Street, or?
No, the district, but these are our priority areas at this point in time. So SCMV is our highest priority. When we do our audit, like who's not showing up, obviously they're not showing up, right? So they needed more help and support. So he's starting there, but he's really a JPS employee.
And it's somewhat of a piggyback on both of their questions. Mrs. Baker and Mr. Patterson both mentioned attendance being an opportunity, and I can certainly appreciate that transparency. If just out of curiosity, if you had to narrow it down to the most effective approach, in your experience, what would it be to get kids to come out of all the various methods that we have?
I would say relationships. Sometimes, if you're my favorite teacher in your first hour, then I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get to school on time. I was in a training in Lansing today, and our superintendent told a story about the kid took the city bus to school because they missed the school bus, and they hadn't had anything to eat, and they just made it a priority because they wanted to, but sometimes there's either a teacher or that meal was there, or somebody just reached out and called and said, what can we do to help you? So making it a priority, I'd say at Parkside the past few years, we wanted to celebrate attendance, not just perfect attendance, but regular celebrations about, hey, we see you coming to school every day. you didn't chose to stay home or, you know, what have you. And sometimes you find out there's some real things going home that impede them from coming to school, and you try to assist them however you can.
Thank you.
I have some questions. SCMV, we are bursting at the seams, sound like, which might be a good thing, maybe, I don't know. Why do we think a lot of our students, so many of our students are choosing that it's a virtual mostly program, correct or no?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we've been attractive from students that are not traditionally Jackson Public School students. I think they have a homeschool population there, that they have that curriculum. I think, you know, we've just seen a growth across the state and the country of online resources. Now that we're a one-to-one district and we've gone through this whole COVID process, and I saw I can do this at home, it could work well. I don't know, like, the number-wise, if students have jobs and there's other things that made it difficult for them to do brick and mortar, and this is more on their time for families and students. So I don't know exactly, but I would say COVID definitely showed them what they can and can't do.
Thank you. Do we know how many have chosen? So it sounds like we're getting people who weren't in brick and mortar at all, that they're coming in. Do we know if we're having brick and mortar students go that direction? And do we contribute at all to the fact that COVID showed them that they can, or is there another reason why they might be going over there?
I'd say it's all of the above. You know, some students we see try a lot of different things, okay, because they haven't found what works. And I can tell you that Mr. Parker and his team have put in a lot of different interventions. I'll use one intervention, for example. If I go to Jackson High, I have 6 classes, and I can't do 6 classes. I'm falling behind, and I'm failing. So they've condensed that to just do 1 or 2 classes well with this support, with this coach checking in, monitor your progress. And that seemed to be a good solution, whereas it's harder to come to Jackson High and say, can I just come for 2 hours? You know, that's not our traditional process here, and they become more of a non-traditional program in that sense.
Marcelon, I don't know what skills-based programs we have, so yay to the college stuff we got going on. How many you say we got?
143.
143. Do we know, so even with that, so it sounds like 143, this is our biggest year, I think that's what you just said, of.
We're the largest in the county, yeah. And I haven't seen the numbers from the past year, but we're the largest in the county.
Do we track how successful they are in those programs?
They do, and I don't know the rates, but I know that we do.
It'd be nice to know, how well students, once they get into it, if they're finishing it, if they're coming back, it'd be nice to know that. Do we have the same kind of, so I don't know what skills-based programs we have here, and you might not have this information right now, but it'd be nice to know what skills-based programs we have for our students and how well they're doing, just how that program might be going.
Like Career Center, maybe?
Nope.
Oh.
What do we have here?
Okay.
So I know about the Career Center, and even that, even Realty Career Center, knowing how they're staying there, because I know we had some troubles with those and some successes with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever we might even have here at JPS, at Jackson High, I know that, the Career Center is for for us to send them, but what we might have on campus as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And just real quick, I'll give you the number from last spring, and obviously we don't have the current year number, but last spring, our JCEC students passed their classes at a 91% rate. That's better than, I'm not kidding, any freshman cohort in any university across the country, I don't care where you're at, to say that our students are competing. When you look at what freshman pass rates are on a traditional college campus, and you look at what our high school students are when they're participating in these college courses, our kids are doing phenomenal. And we intend to continue to grow this program. Make no doubt that this is a dollar saver for our families. If you don't see this, I don't know any better way to give you a scholarship than to encourage your child to be part of our Jackson County Early College. They can transfer, 100% of the credits transfer out of this program, so up to 60 credits, and they can do an associate's degree. They can do a certificate program. So again, we have a student in Jackson High who's getting their EMS certification. So they're going to be able to walk right out of school and get a job, in emergency services. So that's our goal with this. And I'll just tell you, if you're looking at what it costs to go to a traditional four-year university, all right, and I'll use my daughter as an example. She's at Wayne State University. It's $27,000 a year. If you can take 2 years of college off of that, that's a $54,000 scholarship, gang. I don't know any other better way, but that's significant money that they're not borrowing and the parents aren't trying to help cover. So we fully fund it. We provide the device, we cover all the textbooks as needed, and the college is free up to 60 credits. So if your child's not taking advantage of it, we need to have, you know, again, and by the way, Jeremy's 100% right. We have about 150 kids, ballpark. This typically tends to be a junior, senior, 13th year program. And so we're running just about 20% of our kids are doing some level of early college that are eligible. I mean, we don't see as many freshmen taking college classes. The freshmen might take an FYS course, a first year student course, and that might be the only course that they dip their toe into. And then they might take a second class or 1 or 2 classes their sophomore year. And these would be communications or English language or something along those lines. We really kind of enter them into the program in a soft shoe kind of way. I want them to be successful so that their first experiences with college are successes, and they walk across and they go, before they tell me they can't do college, they've already passed 3 classes. And then we really start to beef it up in their junior, senior, and 13th year. We could talk, and Jeremy will get you some information, because I know that Willie's doing some really cool stuff with Henry Ford, and we do some neat stuff with our area manufacturers. That being said, the numbers last year, how we're doing, phenomenal, 91% pass rate. So I anticipate that will continue to grow. And the big chunk of that, again, I'm speaking to parents kind of out in the community, is that while they're here, we're still kind of like mom on site, right? When freshmen go off to college, to the university, they don't have anybody there, and they experience kind of their freedoms for the first time, and so they don't, that's what trips up a lot of college freshmen. Here, we get years of kind of cultivating those study habits and supports, that scaffolding to build that success. Like I said, we start them on 1 or 2 course diet, and they become successful, and then all of a sudden they understand how to pass college courses so that when they end up at the university, they're much more successful. No one was going to let you live that one down. But.
Fake news.
Thank you.
I felt like we won.
Ms. Giannetti, you want to bring us up to speed on what we got going on? There's a couple things on your plate, I believe.
Yeah, there's always a couple things on my plate. First of all, thanks to everyone who has contributed with so much information. It's always thrilling to hear all that we have going on. For my part, I just want to talk real quick about our EOP, which is our emergency operations procedures. You know, it's something that we talk about and do something with weekly, daily, monthly here. Our next step is in August. Some of us superintendents, we went to a training with the Jackson Area County Sheriff's Department on active shooter training, and really had performed, and in that conversation with them, it really became obvious to me that they need to be the ones who are doing the active shooter training here at our schools. So we are meeting this week with actually November 2nd, we are meeting with the Jackson Area Police Department and some of our folks who are on our EOP committee to start to schedule those school by school, because what we have found is those will be the people who respond to our issues and know better to be trained and together and to have names and faces together if something should ever happen here. It's been really important to us to build those relationships, and we've done this, you know, both with our fire departments and the other police departments, but this special training that we plan on planning with our Jackson Area Police Department is going to be an integral part of another community partnership that we have. And I'm real proud that how interesting it is that the perspective of our local law enforcement and fire departments and just everybody so willing to work together to make sure that our schools are safe and that we are comfortable with each other and that there are no questions to be had and that we all are on the same page. And I do want to give a shout out to our Director of Finance, not Finance, but Facilities, which is Todd Fry, because he's taken a real big interest in this, working together with me on a lot of things that we've done to move things forward in the district. And as a facilities person, he really knows our facilities and really has made some great partnerships as well with our community, local law enforcement and stuff like that. And so there's just not one of us working on this, but it is a constant subject for us, as we want you to know that. Just to talk about a couple things that we have coming up. One of the most exciting things we have coming up, for me especially, because I feel like we've been waiting so long to do this, but next Wednesday at 4:45 will be the ribbon cutting for the Aquatic Center. Keep in mind that was scheduled for last year, but because of COVID, crowd rules, we were not allowed to have it and didn't feel it to be safe to do so. We will be holding it this year at 4:45 on Wednesday outside of the pool area. We'll do a ribbon cutting there. There'll be about a half an hour of time for some tours. And then we will move over to the Owl Glick Athletic Center at 5:30 to do a ribbon cutting indoors there for that facility that we are so excited about as well. And after that conclusion of that ribbon cutting, we will continue the tours until 8 p.m. on Wednesday night of the high school facilities. So if you are a person who has been dying to see any of these facilities, I encourage you to come out and join us. The entire community is invited to see these two facilities and really get an idea of what the new areas in our high school are looking for like. So that is next Wednesday. Everyone's invited. You should have gotten your information. Please share that information. There isn't a single person that we don't want to come. So we want you all to see what the work that has been done and what we've been gifted with as well with the Owl Glick Athletic Center. Additionally, we were working, we're trying to do this last year, but again, I hate to mention COVID, but we weren't able to have any gatherings. But one of the parts of our cohorts with our new teachers is gathering them together for some events and partly helping them to see what Jackson has to offer. You know, a lot of us spend most of our day making friends inside of our workplace, but there's a whole world outside here in Jackson, and a lot of people are moving to this area to be teachers and staff for us. And so our first cohort event, which we now have over 100 people who have responded, will be on November 18th, which is the night of the Christmas parade. And so we are hosting a event for our new teachers, both cohorts last year and this year, to join us with their families so that they have a place to watch the parade for Christmas. And then we're going to do a little hors d'oeuvre party for them. While this is not a complete community event, the board is certainly welcome to come and meet all of our new teachers and get to know them. But we thought this would be a great, this is actually Jessica's idea, to get everybody together and really spend some time seeing what their families are like, and then introducing them to an activity in Jackson. And that's sort of what we plan on doing as much as we can with our partners here in Jackson, that there is a lot to do in Jackson. And if you can't find something to do on the weekend, then you're not looking. And that's all I have. If anybody has any questions for me.
Thank you, Chris. All right, I'm going to be remiss. I know that I saw my friend Joel Shaner up here, and he is downstairs working the orchestra concert. But a week from Thursday, the date, Michelle, 27th, is our Halloween concert. This one and Pop Goes the Eagle, my absolute two favorite concerts of the year. Gang, it would be awesome if we could fill, you know, our auditorium this year. It will be a special event. If you've never been to one of Joel's our high school's Halloween programs, they are second to none, and so I would encourage you to do that. We have currently 80 students, 13 parents, and a handful of other chaperones traveling to the Tampa Bay Bowl, formerly the Outback Bowl. And they're going to be traveling December 29th through January 4th. They're performing 3 times. There's a national concert festival, a New Year's Eve parade, and halftime show at the Tampa Bay Bowl. So if you're looking for what you're going to do, please make sure you tune into that one. You'll catch our students. They have got some tremendous donations this year to help fund that, and I think some of those donations are dropping the cost by as much as $400 per participant. So that's huge. They are still looking for some additional support, so if you can reach out and support the band, show up next Thursday at the concert, and they will walk you through how to do that. What a great opportunity, though, for our kids to be able to get traveling again and to be able to go back down and support this. That concludes the superintendent's report for the month of October.
Okay, thank you. Lots of great stuff. We are on number 6, the consent agenda. So at this time, I would entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Shalonda. Any deliberation? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We are on number 7, citizens requesting to address the board. I have a few slips here, so I'll just call you up one by one, and you can sit right there and use the microphone. We have a nice visual timer here. You get 5 minutes, and there's no back and forth, but we certainly appreciate your input and have your contact information if there's any necessary follow-up. So with that, the first one is Peter Bormuth. Sorry.
Peter Bormuth, 142 West Pearl Street. I want to speak to the coming election to this body, the Board of Education. I am not going to tell you who to vote for, but I want to say that there's one candidate who's completely unqualified for this office, and his name is Derek Dobies. On November 6, 2010, Derek Dobies left a downtown establishment with a blood alcohol level of .13 and T-boned a City of Jackson police car. He could have killed one of our law enforcement people. I believe that anyone with a drunk driving charge should not be elected to a Board of Education. This is my personal viewpoint. I hope the voters share it. On November 29th, 2018, in a court proceeding before Honorable Judge McBain here in Jackson County, which was a motion for summary judgment, Derek Dobies, during cross-examination, when the judge asked him a direct question after he had taken the oath to be truthful, lied. He said under oath, "I've done a diligent search of what I have on my computer, and I don't have any text messages with Nikki Jolie that would be a public document." A state police FOIA revealed that there were multiple messages, text messages with Nikki Jolie that dealt with public issues. And I can list them for you if you would like, or if you'd like to talk to me later. I also want to talk about Derek Dobies' judgment in putting Nikki Jolie in charge of the NDO when he was mayor. Nikki Jolie ended up pleading no contest to a third-degree arson charge, where in order to simulate a hate crime, she actually torched her own apartment and killed her own 2 dogs and 3 cats to get Derek Dobies elected as mayor. I also want to talk about Derek Dobies' control over the Democratic Party. He's on the executive committee of the Jackson County Democratic Party, and his right-hand man, Connor Wood, is the chairperson. They make the choices of who runs for office, including the strange decision to run Maurice Imhoff, a 20-year-old, for our state legislature, when this young man had threatened to shoot up his Northwestern High School middle school, and had apparently also engaged in some things where he was showing confidential photographs of fellow classmates. I think this was an atrocious decision to run this young man, knowing that background as they did, and I think it embarrassed Governor Whitmer. I think it embarrassed Dana Nessel, our Attorney General, who had given endorsements to this person, and it just shows a complete lack of judgment and a complete lack of vetting candidates. From the Dobies Connor Wood element, we also got Connor Wood's wife, Kelsey Heck, to run as a state senator. Now, fortunately, there was another person running, Sue Schenck, who is a very qualified person, but she's from Ann Arbor. It would have been nice to have a candidate from Jackson. Finally, I want to talk about Derek Dobies' position on the separation of church and state, which is becoming a rather large issue for boards of education because of things like library books or including prayers. When I was trying to stop the County of Jackson from offering a public prayer before meetings, meaning the elected officials themselves, not a guest minister, but the elected officials themselves, a total violation of separation of church and state. Derek Dobies supported the practice. Derek Dobies, for all you Democratic voters out there, is just like the Republicans. He wants to put religion into our government and into our schools. So I ask all the Democratic voters out there, please, in this upcoming election, take those blue Dobies signs out of your front lawn and vote for someone who is qualified to serve on the Board of Education. Because Derek Dobies is a drunk driver, a perjurer, and has demonstrated repeatedly poor judgment in selecting people to run for public office. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Sue McRellis.
Good evening. My name is Sue McRellis. I am a graduate of and a taxpayer in the JPS district, and a grandmother concerned with the indoctrination of children. I come to you this evening with just 2 points of information. The first one concerns spoiled ballots. If you have already voted absentee and changed your mind about anything on the ballot, you can go to your city or township clerk and ask to spoil your ballot. At this point, the ballot should still be identifiable as to the voter who cast the ballot. The clerk will find the ballot, spoil it, and issue a new ballot to the voter. The voter can fill in the ballot again and return it to the clerk. My second point concerns indoctrination versus parental rights. Proposal 3 is far more radical than abortion without restriction or regulation up to the point of birth. The proposed amendment seeks to give the government more control over a child's decisions than the parent when it comes to abortion, sterilization, and or transitioning between genders. What happens when parental notification by teachers or counselors or staff and consent laws disappear from the books? Those wishing to learn more about the pitfalls and dangers of the state raising the child instead of the parent should use the internet to research the Lebensborn, or Font of Life movement in Germany from 1935 to 1945. To raise Germany's birth rate depleted by World War I and to further their hopes of increasing pure Aryanism among German peoples, the Nazi regime convinced unwed mothers to purposely get pregnant, often with officers of the SS, and then give up their children to the state, to the Lebensborn schools. This happened when they were still infants. Once in a state-run institution, the children would be indoctrinated in the ways of National Socialism from the earliest age, and then given to the families of elite members of the Third Reich to raise. Eventually, children were kidnapped by the thousands against their parents' wishes to be raised in these schools of indoctrination. They were taken from Scandinavia, from Poland, from France. By the end of World War II, there were thousands of parentless children across Germany who did not know their real families. The state have robbed them of their identity. Is that an extreme example? Yes. But Proposal 3 is just that, extreme. That's the whole point. You can't look the other way, sit this one out, or worse yet, vote for it because you think somehow, some way, some good can come from evil. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Mary Crocker.
My name is Mary Crocker. I'm a resident of the city of Jackson, and I am here to express my concern over Mr. Dobies as a school board member. He supported Mr. Imhoff, knowing full well that he had been charged with terroristic threats against a school in the past, and I do not feel that is an appropriate representative for a school board. And I would ask that you all reconsider any kind of endorsement of Mr. Dobies for the school board. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Rebecca Risky.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Risky. I'm a mom of a kid at the Cascades Elementary School, which you've heard good things about, which I do believe is a really good school. And I want to thank you guys tonight for all your work. I know being a school board member is a lot of work. You guys have a huge district. And as somebody who graduated from a public school, I understand that there is a lot of moving parts to every single aspect of school and maintaining enrollment and everything else. There's a lot. My husband and myself are here tonight because we want to raise concern about what is happening at Cascades. We discovered a week ago tomorrow, that the program he was enrolled in was basically canceled. We were not given a call. I've reached out to several of you to let you know, and I've gotten an email back from you, Mr. Beals. Thank you very much for taking the time. But it's still upsetting, and I just feel the need to tell you guys tonight specifically what's going on. We chose Cascades because we heard they had a Young Five program, which was great for our little guy who is only barely 5. He turned 5 on September 2nd, meaning he wasn't quite ready for kindergarten yet. And he, like all of us, have been dealing with COVID for 2 years. We were not notified by anybody in the school that this was even being considered. And then we were not even notified by anybody when it happened. We found out at his conference that his Young Five class was now a kindergarten class. It's astounding that there was no notification or communication out to us. When we heard back and got a little more information, basically what it sounds like to us is an over-enrollment of the kindergarten program. I can't believe that we don't know what enrollment numbers really are before a school program starts. And Mr. Beals, you did let us know that you guys take applications for enrollment after Labor Day when school started this year, August 24th. I am so upset that we don't have any real numbers that lead us to appropriately assign teachers to the classrooms and to have the right number of classrooms. Another thing that's really upsetting myself and my husband is that we were told that it'll just look like he went to kindergarten for 2 years, which I'm sure is really not that big a deal, but that's not what we signed up for. We did not sign up for 2 years of kindergarten. We signed up for Young Five program to be followed by kindergarten. And had we wanted him to be, we didn't want him to do 2 years of kindergarten. Had we known that this was going to be an issue at the school that advertised this program, that you were going to take it away, put it on the chopping block without notice, we would have found another solution. We could have moved him to another of the JPS schools. We could have also let him go to the preschool he went to last year, which he absolutely adored. But we wanted to start him and give him a good foundation at the public school we were hoping to move him to, because it is in our neighborhood. It is our community school. We are rooted here. This is where we want to send our kids. To me, and I don't want to say to me, this whole situation was very deceptive to a parent enrolling at Cascades for the Young Fives. It was terminated with no notice. I'm asking you tonight to be better, to do better. Fix how you enroll students. Don't wait and settle your enrollment numbers after school has started. I don't want any other parents and any other kids to go through this. And I'm not saying this is such a hardship that we're going to pull our son out. We're not. He loves his teacher, which is so important for young kids to have that learning love, and going to school is mostly on those teachers, and we all know that. And his teacher is wonderful, and we will not take him away from her. We also, have found him to have these great friendships with these other little kids that he's with in class. The thing that's most upsetting, I think, when I look back at this whole situation is that for about 4 weeks, he adjusted, came home a little crabby, and then all of a sudden, after we'd settled in, he came back home again, crabby, and telling me he didn't want to go to school. And then telling me there was too many kids in his class, it was too noisy, and I had no idea what he was talking about. I thought he was just being crazy. I mean, he's, 5. I figured there was a group event at the school, and it was just overwhelming for him. But then I find out at his conference that, in fact, his class size basically doubled overnight with no notice to anybody. So all I'm asking is to do better, be better, find a better way to handle enrollment so that way you don't do this to other kids in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, William Hastings.
Tonight, we are going to have a much-needed discussion concerning ethical and unethical actions, consequences, and basic human decency. This will be a discussion about how the powerful can sometimes treat the powerless. You could say this is a discussion about social justice. What I'm about to say directly concerns the professional reputation of every member of this board and the public reputation of Jackson Public Schools. This story begins with a young man who, just 2 weeks ago today, was publicly denounced and condemned by the governor of Michigan, by the Attorney General of Michigan, and the entire House Democratic caucus for offenses he committed when he was 14 years old. This was a front-page news story throughout Michigan and reported in national outlets as well. That's where the story begins, but it directly connects with candidate Derek Dobies and ends with you, the sitting members of the school board. Maurice Imhoff should be in your thoughts tonight. He has just experienced two of the most painful and publicly humiliating weeks of his life. Try to remember some of the lowest times you've personally experienced, and please think of him with some grace and mercy in your heart. At age 14, Maurice had gotten into some serious trouble. As most everyone knows by now, he made threats against his own school and circulated pornographic pictures of a 13-year-old girl in order to demean and humiliate her. There were other serious offenses as well. Maurice, however, got 3 big breaks. He was sentenced to probation and not jail time. His second break was he was not expelled and able to finish high school despite committing multiple serious offenses. The third break was the most important one. He became involved with a local group called Rise Above. Rise Above is run by 2 people whose faith defines their lives, and their mission is not just to keep kids in trouble like Maurice connected with school and stay on track to graduate, but to rehabilitate troubled hearts and broken spirits. Rise Above is what faith in action looks like. Maurice worked on himself, and by age 18 had earned a fresh start. At age 18, however, Maurice met someone who embodied an entirely different spirit than the people at Rise Above. Maurice met Derek Dobies. Derek was not interested in Maurice as a human being. He was interested in him because he checked 4 boxes: young, black, male, and the one that should give every single person in this room pause, the 4th box he checked, criminal history. So when we talk sometimes here about the many black kids in Jackson who are valedictorians, who are doing advanced academic work, early college, or maybe they're gen ed kids who have always stayed on the path and stayed out of trouble and are a credit to their community and families, those kids were invisible to Derek. They simply did not exist because they didn't check that last box, did they? So when Derek looked to appoint a young person, as with everything else for Derek Dobies, the slot on the Human Relations Commission was a means to an end, the end being to groom Maurice for elective office because, after all, as I said, he checked some important boxes. And an adult or older person with love, concern, and compassion in his heart would have told Maurice to get on with his life, go to college, work, use that fresh start he was given to build a new life. The last thing any responsible person ever would have done would be to push him into politics, given what had occurred at Northwest High School. Terrible judgment. But that's exactly what Dobies did. He groomed Maurice, then handpicked him to run as a state rep from Jackson with no opposition in the primary. Every step of the way, he knew that there was a chance that Maurice might be exposed, humiliated, and broken again. But Derek is a political king, and Maurice was a political pawn, so he simply did not give a damn. Keep in mind that Derek Dobies is easily the biggest political power broker in Jackson County. He has the power to handpick his own handpick his own successors as city councilman, mayor, as well as the power to pick the candidate for state representative. This year, Finally, this year, the much older Dobies pushed the pawn forward on the board. Maurice, with the full backing of Mr. Dobies, was pushed in electoral politics. But while Imhoff's juvenile record was sealed, the lips of the young girl whom he had hurt at Northwest were not. Maurice was exposed, publicly humiliated, and politically destroyed. Despite all this, Maurice's mentor has been endorsed by every member of this school board save one. So when you chose to endorse this individual, this issue that I'm discussing has become a board issue and a JPS issue. Do I really need J marks at my side with a big whiteboard to sketch out for all of you the intersection of powerful and politically connected white man Derek Dobies with a vulnerable black teenage boy, barely of age, raised by a single mother with few resources? The failure of the board and administration to address this glaring example of inequity is deafening.
Thank you, Mr. Hastings.
Thank you. Next up, Marilyn Acton Dowell.
Good evening. Marilyn Acton Dowell, candidate for JPS School Board. So actually, I do have training in the Nonviolent Intervention Program through CPI at my former position. It works. I've used it a lot. It's a really, really good program. I'm really glad you're doing that. And one thing that I was going to just mention, I'm sitting here listening to everyone's comments. I don't know the acronyms, so I'm kind of thinking in my brain, what's PBIS? And then I'm kind of missing kind of what's going on. So if you could just say what the acronyms mean, I think it would help a lot of people in the audience. So I had something written, but really Julie Baker addressed so many things. I'm just so thrilled, all the programs, because there's arts, I see all the things that you're doing to help raise our proficiency scores that I always address. So there's an orchestra program. I'm just thrilled what you're doing here. And I was going to say something too, that I was in the Carnegie Library on Friday in the afternoon. It was like 4:30, and really no one was there. And I really think you could maybe take advantage of that and get children library cards. It's just an amazing facility, and no one really uses it. You could hear a pin drop. I mean, you're supposed to anyways, but. So really, I just want to continue to bring awareness to the annual education report on the JPS website, because that's really going to be the scorecard to see with all these programs if they're working. And it's just right there. All the results are there. And Julie has been so helpful because I email her on a Sunday, and she emails me back. Thank you. So appreciate it. So, yeah, I just want to really, I'm so excited because I see right now through this meeting, we're really focusing on reading, writing, and arithmetic, and about proficiency scores that really make a difference, because in my previous profession as a medical technologist, I did have to take a board exam. And if I didn't, and as actually a professional counselor, and I wouldn't have gotten a license, and I wouldn't have had a job if I hadn't been proficient. So I'm just really thankful. Thank you for everything you're doing. I know it's a thankless job. It's a lot of work, but I want to be on board with you. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, Fred Trexler.
My name is Fred Trexler. I'm a retired physics professor from Spring Arbor University and Houghton University in Western New York State. I want to thank you, school board members, for all the hard work that you do. I know you have to make a lot of hard decisions. Last month, I talked to you about the problems of trying to implement some of the stuff that the the Michigan School Board is trying to push down on you in terms of trying to keep parents in the dark about any trans students and things like that. Please, for hold the highest standards of morality and ethics for Jackson Public Schools. I urge you to do that. And I was going to say something about Derek Dobies being inappropriate for school board, and so many other people have stated that much better. And so I'm just going to say I support Marilyn Acton Dowell for school board member. I think she'd be a much better person. And so, again, thank you for the good work you're doing.
Okay, thank you. And that concludes number 7. So we are on to number 8, discussion items 22-23-36, out-of-state conference request.
All right, so this is before us because our board policy requires that anytime we have a, this is bylaw, by the way, 0144.1, 0175.1, and in conjunction with Michigan Law 381, 1254. Board member requested to attend the National School Board Association conference, which is being held in Orlando, Florida. And I'll make sure I get this correct. So the board of a school district or immediate school district, the board of directors of public school academy, or an authority board, an educational achievement authority shall not approve payment of an expense incurred by a board member under this section unless the board member, the following conditions are met. The board, by a majority vote of its members at an open meeting, approves reimbursement of the specific expense before the expenses occurred, and the expense is consistent with policy adopted by the board by a majority vote of its members. To that end, Ms. Hamilton, I'll turn this over to you since you were the requesting board member.
Thank you. So we also have another policy in our policy stash that allows us to go to state conferences without having to have prior approval by the board. The request that I'm having or requesting and making is that we just follow that policy at the state level as well. We choose to, our superintendent has been choosing to say no to, and you have your reason why you did mention, because, you can let them know your reason. But we do have a policy when it comes to conferences that we can go to all conferences, state, local, and national. But our practice has been to only send us to state and local conferences. I would like us to change our practice so that when nationals come up, this isn't a conversation that we have to have at the table, that we'll do the same thing we've been doing for state conferences, and that is if anyone wants to go as a board member, we just go, like we've been doing. But essentially, there are conversations that are had at the national level that are not had at the state level. I'd like to be in those conversations. We are preparing our students for a national market, a global market, hopefully. Without being in those conversations, we can't prepare them. We don't know what conversations are being had. We don't know what new innovative ideas are being discussed if we're not in those spaces. So essentially, like I said, this is not a request simply just for this conference, but just in general, if and when we choose to, as board members, want to get our professional development at the national level, I don't want us to have this conversation at this table. We should just be able to go. Because again, the conversations that are had at the national level, you're not having at the state and local level. Thank you.
I wanted to make just a couple comments right now, maybe some more later. But the Orlando conference is offered online as well as in person. Education protocols and laws are by state. Each state focuses on the needs identified for their specific area. For example, the educational system in Florida is completely different than what is in Maine. And to put the time and money and effort into going to national conference just because, I think it's just being a little bit loosey-goosey with our funding. And I will also think that unless we have attended several local and state conferences prior to this, that it wouldn't be necessary to go and discuss other people's states. Now, there's a lot to be said for networking. And Michigan has a lot of conferences for principals, superintendents, financial people. But that's because not only do we have an excellent school system in Michigan, but we have completely different needs, completely different goals. We have completely different areas of deficit. So I guess I just think that going to a national conference without going to what we have to offer already at the local and state level is really unnecessary at this point. That's my thought.
I'll answer those, Pam, just because this is my request, and I think it's important, you know, that I'm able to answer those. So I might be the most conferenced board member in my time. So in the time that I've been on the board, the conferences that have been offered statewide and locally, I've been at. So that's just one thing to kind of address that point. The other thing, online versus in-person attendance, the way that we pushed for our students to get back in person from COVID, because of the benefits of being in person, I think speaks for why in-person conference attending is much better than online. The last thing that you mentioned, national conferences. So the national conference for 2022, which is this year, was in California. Next year it's in Orlando. The conferences, when they're based in a certain state, the conversations and information are not based on that state. National conferences bring individuals from all over the nation to a location, and all of those different people, the conversations that are had there, again, are coming from all those different locations. They're not based on Orlando state or Florida state law or California state law, or, you know. So that kind of addresses just that point. I just wanted to kind of address those three, since again, I'm requesting that we change this altogether.
I'd like to state that based on my prior experience as a teacher and looking at local conferences and state conferences and national conferences, I felt that I got the most from national conferences because you had all these different opinions and all different texts and new things that you could look at, programs you could bring back to your teaching community. And that's, you know, I can't relate to MASB and doing it there, but I know looking at national conferences versus local conferences, what can be, you know, what can be gained from going to a national conference. I think national conferences also bring national issues that are common towards every state in the union. So also networking, you know, you're able to do that. When I attended a virtual conference as far as the state conference, and it was really limited. I didn't feel that I got the total experience by attending the conference virtually, and I think if I had been there, because the main thing that you gain is talking to other people, getting ideas of what they've done, what's worked, what hasn't worked. And it's an opportunity to get a lot of information in a short period of time rather than, you know, having to go through in-services that may take years to get that same information. So I'd like to support Keisha on being able to attend the national conference, or anybody else who wants to attend the national conference. It doesn't, I think that everybody that wants to should be able to attend it because I think it's invaluable. Thank you.
I would just like to say I definitely do not think we should be spending the district's money for any board member to go out of state. I think if we were considering sending anyone, it should be teachers and administrators who are on the front line in these buildings working with students that could bring back things. So I am definitely against this.
So I'm aware that the National School Board Association is now allowing local board members to attend their conference, which I don't think always happened in the past. But that doesn't mean that we're obligated to send someone. Local boards are responsible to local and state legislation. And we have state boards and state committees who are responsible to national legislation. So we have the Michigan Board of Education, the board of the Michigan Association of School Boards, and I think unless one of us serves at a state level, I don't think the district should be paying for us to go to a national conference. I've been on this board for 10 years. I am level 3 certified with the Michigan Association of School Boards, and there is still a multitude of educational opportunities available to me in Michigan. I would not approve myself to go to a national conference on the district's dollar. And the policy that was stated, 144.1, does say that attendance at board-approved conferences should be at the location closest to the district. This conference that is being held in Orlando, there is no schedule of events. We have no listing of what educational opportunities are even going to be offered. So I can't figure out how it's even attractive when you don't even know what's on the agenda. And if we ever were to consider sending board members to national conferences, I think that there should be criteria for being able to go, which includes certification at the state level. And coincidentally, we had a policy committee meeting last week with our representative from Neola, and totally unsolicited, he warned us about vacations disguised as conferences. And this particular conference is in Orlando on a spring break weekend. I'm pretty sure that if Mr. Beal went to a conference over spring break on our dollar, that he would be more than criticized for that.
I want to answer a couple of those again because this is my request. So this idea that, conversations at the state level and local level are, sufficient for learning is kind of sad. We, as a school board ourselves, should really want to be in bigger conversations versus kind of swimming in the same pool. Because, again, then we're bringing the same ideas back. And if we are intentional about data and kind of looking at, these ideas that we're bringing here, how they are impacting us, especially if we've been here for 5, 10 years or more, and we're not seeing any significant changes in the areas that need change, then I think we should question ourselves, why aren't we? Is it because possibly we are still listening to the same ideas and haven't heard anything more? The other thing, the idea that a national conference that has been national for a lot longer than 2 or 3 years, because we're talking about a National Association of School Board conferences, the idea that because they have just opened their books and they're just kind of put the information out here that this is the date and we don't have our agenda aligned and set up already, that means that someone's trying to take advantage of, I don't even know what, I won't even try to figure out what you said with that. But the idea that simply because they don't have their agenda established already means that someone's trying to, I think loosey-goosey is what I heard at one time here at the table, or just to take advantage of a trip. Now, and I know that sometimes oftentimes we are speaking from our own experience. So for me, in my mind, when I go to conferences, I go to conferences. I don't do, so I wouldn't assume that any of us who are attending a conference are going there for a trip, because in my mind, and when I go to conferences, I don't do that. So I know that when we speak from our own experiences, sometimes, we kind of put that on other people, unfortunately. But the trip, like I said, the national conference this year was in California. It was not in Florida. Now it's in Florida, and next year it's going to probably be someplace else. Again, conversations at the national level. We should, as a school board, want to have those conversations so that we can bring that information back, so that we can make sure that we are preparing our students for a national, reality, a national, so they can compete, versus just state and locally. But again, I just wanted to answer those because, the idea that somebody would go simply for a vacation, it's a bit offensive, and again, I know that we're oftentimes going from our own personal experiences, but that's not mine.
So just to clarify, my issue with the agenda and the educational content not being available to us is that we have no way to know if these offerings are available closer to home. That was my point in that.
That does make sense, and we would know more when it's time for them to release it, we would know at that time. But this is not a request based on what's available. Again, I think we've all been to conferences enough where we know that that bigger learning comes in those conversations that we're having and in those keynote conversations. It's not in the classes that are taking place, because we can get those oftentimes, at home. It's in those conversations that you have with individuals or connections that you're making. And then again, like the keynotes and et cetera. But just in that relationship building, a lot of that, you can't get that, at the state level. You just can't, because it's not, it's just not national.
The last point that I'm going to make on this is that the job of a school board is to hire and evaluate the superintendent, set policy, and oversee finances. It is not to bring back ideas for student success, for curriculum changes, things like that. To go to a national conference would really be more Mr. Beal's thing, because he is the head of the district. I really believe that a school board member getting that involved in let's bring back things that work and things like that is really out of our purview, and we shouldn't even consider it.
And that's directly in conflict with our policies that suggest and inform us as school board members that when we go to conferences, wherever they are, that we bring back the information that we've learned. It's in our policy, so that's directly in contradiction to it. So that's really not the only job of a school board member. There's much more than what was just listed, and it's actually in conflict and a lie based on what our policy says.
Okay, we are moving on. Number 9, action items 22-23-37 is Sharp Park Playground, and Marcus.
All right, so Sharp Park is the final playground that we have not updated yet. We have a plan layout after walking through with the building principal and reached out and received a quote in the amount of $238,030.03 from Game Time. This will be funded from next year's budget, 23-24, just with supply chain lead times, and by the time it's installed, will most likely be after July 1st, which would be under next year's budget. So at this time, we would recommend the board approve the quote from Game Time in that amount listed above. We did bring this to the Finance Facility Committee last month as well to discuss.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I would entertain a motion for approval of the quote from Game Time in the amount of $238,030.03 as presented. Thank you, Libby. Thank you, Cheryl. Any deliberation? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next line item is 22-23-38, SCMV furniture. Marcus?
So again, we've heard about the expansion of our SCMV program over at the mall. We've hired additional staff and secured some temporary space for them as we look for a larger permanent space there. So we are in need of furniture to accommodate the new staff and service the needs of our students. We reached out to Kentwood Office Furniture, who's provided furniture throughout the district through our bond projects. And we received a quote from them and also discussed that the furniture we're looking to purchase for this space would also work and be able to be moved to our new permanent space once we secure that. So this time we would recommend the approval of the quote from Kentwood in the amount of $29,208.77.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. At this time, I would entertain a motion for approval of the quote from Kentwood Office Furniture in the amount of $29,208.77 as presented.
Support.
Thank you, Shalonda. Thank you, Aaron. Any deliberation? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We are on number 10, board comments, so this time I would open it up to any board comments. Pam?
I have two, actually. The first one is regarding the kids that were here tonight. I love it that we're through the COVID thing enough to bring our students in from different schools. I loved it when we did that before, and it's fun to see. Six of my kids have gone through Jackson Public, so I know that it's out there. I know things that are out there. But I really enjoyed the fact that we were able to see all the different schools, and they are so different, and they focus on different things, even locally, than one another might. Okay, my second comment has to do with the very interesting negative discussion about one of our board candidates. And I have two things I want to say about that. Number one, why do we allow public comment to slam citizens during our meeting? We get terrorized by people sometimes, but I'm not comfortable allowing public comment to one another. That's not okay. And the second thing, Derek's impact on Jackson has literally turned our city around. I'm fifth generation Jackson. I know what it was like 200 years ago when my grandparents would still talk about it. As a leader, he has been exemplary, and we're all reaping the benefit. I have made no secret of my strong support for Derek. If elected, I expect this level of commitment to extend to the Jackson Public School Board. And going back 12 years and trying to pull something out that's totally unrelated to what we're talking about, and doing an open forum that's a public board meeting, has nothing to do with that type of thing. I didn't appreciate it, I don't like it, and I do very much support Derek Dobies. Personally, not as a school board member. That's it. Oh, my mic off.
The one thing that impressed me the most tonight, Julie, was your report. I really appreciated it. And to me, it was most evident that the data that you're collecting is then being used to create programs to solve the problems. And I really appreciate that. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
I'll just say that, you can't emphasize enough of student growth as far as our head count. I remember sitting here almost 6 years ago, and we were in the early stages of planning for the bond, and it was literally just a brainstorm session of some of the ideas that we threw out at that time that were just seeds. The pool, for example, was just literally a thought. All of the buildings and the things that we've done, and this is just from a facility standpoint. I understand there's much more that goes with student growth and getting that head count. But what came with that was facilities, was really this thought that we would eventually get to this place where people would be attracted to come to Jackson Public Schools. Parents would be attracted to come to Jackson Public Schools. And what came with the facilities was some of the staff that we've brought on, some of the teachers that we've hired, some of the leaders that are in our buildings. And to see after this year's student count, that number that we took it on the chin for numerous years and dealt with all of those blows. But we are certainly in the right direction. And I'm super duper proud of that, to start to see some of the fruits of our labor. We're certainly not perfect, and we certainly have a long ways to go. But if you have two eyes, you certainly should be able to see the progress that has been made. And ultimately, that's what I signed up for to be on this board, was for generations of Jackson Public Schools to improve and propel. So I know I won't even entertain some of the comments tonight. We're in that season, but that's all I'll say.
So I just had a couple comments. I would like to see more data, just in general, when we bring our reports. So we got good stuff going on, yay, that's good, we want it to be happening, but we would like to know how it's impacting our students. And we should, since we have that data, it should be easy to be pulled and just say, this is what it was before, this is what it is now. Whether it's good or bad, this is how we're addressing the bad, or this is, we're gonna continue on because it's good. I think it'd be really, I like data, so I would like to see more data. The other thing that I'm gonna say is that I do apologize to our citizens in the audience on behalf of the board for you all basically having comments from board members that kind of would like to censor what you're saying. The idea around public comment time is to give you an opportunity to say whatever it is that you want to say to this board. There are issues that are occurring in our city and state, nation, that are impacting our students. And, this time is provided for you to be able to just come and let us know what you're thinking. We don't have to agree with you. We can agree with you. But the idea is that you can come and just have that time. I apologize, though, because sometimes when someone says something that, as was just said, it might make you feel like you shouldn't come and say whatever it is you want to say. It's really important for me that I hear whatever you're saying, whether I agree with it or not. So please don't let that be a reason to not come and still speak. You can speak. You can say whatever it is you want to say in those 5 minutes based on our little guidelines that we have. And it is, like I said, it's just important to me that you not feel like you have to come and say what I want to hear in order to sit at that seat. So like I said, I do apologize for that. Pam does not speak for this entire board, neither do I, even though I am still apologizing on behalf of the board for that statement.
Libby?
I'd like to thank both Julie and Jeremy for the reports that they gave. I'm always anxious to hear what's going on in the buildings, and you have so many things that I couldn't even, if you asked me to name 5, I would be hard pressed because there's so much good going on. So keep up the good work, guys.
I'm looking forward to the ribbon cutting, and I hope that everyone comes.
And I am never at a loss when people ask me why I love JPS. So thank you for your reports. There's so many great things going on in every building across the district. So it's great to hear. And homecoming, too, I will say was great, too, with the parade and the game. And see, I'm not a sports person. I didn't even know that we didn't win. So I was going right along with it, Jeremy. So, all right, with that, we are on number 11. There's no new business. Number 12 is the calendar. Just some reminders. October 26th, like we talked about, is the ribbon cutting. November 8th is Election Day, so remember to get out and vote. And then November 15th will be our regular board meeting back here at the high school at 5:45. Number 13 is adjournment, so at this time I would entertain a motion for adjournment. So moved. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Shalonda. Any deliberation? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you and have a great night.